Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist. In my video series that I do on different manipulation tactics, there are all different sorts of manipulation tactics that a person can engage in with someone else to try to get certain benefits from it. And in this video today, I'm going to be talking about fake crying, false crying, manipulative crying, the kind of crying that when it happens and you are on the receiving end, you're looking at it, you're watching it, and you're thinking something just doesn't feel quite right. And a lot of times, what really is going on with you is you're having a reaction that you might be being manipulated. In that moment, manipulation might be at work, and it's a bad feeling. You know what? Especially if this is happening with somebody that you actually care about, somebody whom you actually trust. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, when we talk about crying, this is not to say that there is one universal way that people should cry. Okay. One of the things I'm thinking of is what Oprah Winfrey has always called the ugly cry. When people go into the ugly cry, and you know exactly what that is. Each one of us has done it, and it's messy. It might involve not just tissues, but actual towels for cleanup. That's what an ugly cry can kind of lead to. But there are all different sorts of crying. You know, a really intense crying can actually involve kind of like heaving, right? Almost like you're trying to catch your breath. The tears, the intensity is that bad. Your body actually feels that overwhelmed. Sometimes a person can cry a quieter cry. There are other times that a person can cry. Maybe you've had this experience where the tears are just streaming down your cheeks. It's like waterworks. And actually there's very little movement in your body otherwise. It almost feels like the tears are coming and you can't turn off the waterworks. So there are many different ways, of course, that a person cries. And you know what? One of the best ways to ask yourself, you can think back to the last time you cried. You can go back to one of the last TV shows or movies that really, really made you cry. I'm thinking for myself, I just kind of binged watched the old TV series Nashville that stars Connie Britton. I love that woman. I follow her in almost every show she has. I mean, Friday Night Lights, I don't know if she can ever outdo that one. That was such a great series. But anyhow, there was a scene in one of these last episodes that I watched with Connie Britton in Nashville. And boy, the tears were coming, and it was one of those cries that was so intense, it was almost like I was kind of trying to catch my breath. I'm thinking of another old movie that I watched, Shadowlands, with Deborah Winger and Anthony Hopkins. I don't know if I have ever cried so heavily in a movie or as a result of a movie as I did with that one, but you can just think yourself about when the last time was that you cried, and what did your cry look like? Maybe you were watching a TV show, or maybe you were watching a movie. Maybe you were in some kind of situation with someone in your life and something happened, and all of a sudden it made you feel tearful. And you could also, of course, have been by yourself. Sometimes some of the most intense cries, I think, we can actually have on our own. Sometimes when you shut out all the noises around you, sometimes when there's less stimulation, that can be actually when the intensity of feelings or maybe thoughts or memories they start hitting, and sometimes that crying can be quite intense. But you can think yourself about typical ways that you cry, what it looks like physically. If somebody were to look through a window and see you crying, what some of the ways you are capable of crying, what that looks like. All right. All of that said is to say, these types of crying that we're talking about, these are very different than manipulative crying. And so I want to go through a few different signs that the kind of crying that you are seeing in someone might actually be a manipulation tactic. That those tears, that this crying might actually be false or fake and actually a manipulation. So, one of the first signs that somebody may be fake crying with you in a manipulative way is when it seems like they can turn it on and turn it off at a moment's notice. It almost seems like picture someone's turning on the TV and they've got a remote control. It almost feels something about it like this crying is almost controlled by a remote control. That is how almost calculated it can feel. That's one sign. Another sign is when there is no physical sign of actual crying. Earlier I talked about some of the ways that a person can cry. And when there is fake crying going on, a lot of times when it's a manipulation, there aren't the same physical signs like we talked about before. So there's no redness of the eyes, there's no sort of shakiness of the breath. Sometimes there's no tears. And so you see all the other affectations of crying, but somehow it feels like, wait a minute, isn't something missing in this person's crying? Something about it, again, just doesn't feel right. Another sign of fake crying, they seem to be aware of, wait for it, and this one's kind of upsetting. It's almost kind of creepy, emotionally speaking. They seem to be aware of who is watching. They seem to be aware of who's watching. And that speaks for itself. So I don't need to go any further in describing that one. The next sign that I want to talk about is the timing. The timing of fake crying a lot of times can seem like, wait a minute, isn't this timing almost a little too perfect? One simple example of this may be when you are trying to talk to somebody. Maybe you're upset with somebody, and maybe the other person feels cornered, or they're feeling like you're holding them accountable and they don't like it and they don't want it. And so sometimes a person will, in a manipulative way, engage in fake crying simply to get you to stay off their back, to stop what you're doing, to stop essentially holding them accountable. But again, the timing of it seems concerning. You don't trust something about the timing of their crying. And finally, the last sign that I want to talk about is this isn't a one time occurrence. This is a pattern of behavior. And anybody who follows my YouTube channel here, Dr. Seth Psychologist, knows that one of the main life lessons that I hope that people learn, just in general, is to begin to think more about patterns and learn to identify more patterns in their life instead of focusing on just one time events or specific details. Really, a lot of times when there are significant issues, significant problems, it is because there is a pattern of behavior. All right. These are all some examples of when a person may be engaging in fake crying that is a manipulation tactic. Now, just because somebody engages in any one of these doesn't mean, well, you know what? This is proof. This is a manipulation. That's what they're doing. Ultimately, what you need to do is you need to consider all of the information involved. And at the end of the day, although these signs are important that I reviewed, there is also something called your own instinct. And we have instincts about things. And your instinct probably doesn't want to believe that something is going on with someone that is making you not trust them. That's probably not something that you want. So sometimes when we feel this instinct about something, that something's off, something's not right, something is not to be trusted, it is information that you have to look more carefully at. And again, see if this is a pattern going forward. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist. I hope this has been helpful. And I also hope you can find some other videos on my channel here helpful for you. Have a good one, everybody.